I'd like to welcome you all to our inaugural New Zealand GIS In Conservation quarterly brown bag lunchtime session. So this is something that we've been planning and hoping to do for quite some time, and it's taken us till now to get around to organising it. So thank you to everyone who can join us today. It's really a chance just to highlight the work of our volunteers and also the community conservation and iwi groups that we're working with. Today we're going to hear from a couple of folks. So Scott Sample, who's one of our GIS and Conservation regional volunteers and Director of Ethos Environmental. And Scott's going to talk to us about the work that they're doing with the Bay Conservation Alliance up in the Bay of Plenty. We'll also be joined by Julian Hitchman, who's going to give a volunteer's perspective on a group that he's working with, the Waikanae Estuary Care Group in the Kapiti Coast. And then time permitting, we're going to hear from Quentin Higgin, who's just started a new project with Wingspan up in Rotorua. They're a group that work quite closely with the New Zealand, particularly New Zealand Bird of Prey. And so we haven't got a presentation from Parker today. He sent in his apologies. Unfortunately, he's got another commitment at lunchtime today. So we'll hear from him next time in the work that they're doing with the dotterels, just admitting a few people as we go. So thanks to everyone for joining us. If you could just maybe hold questions just at the end of some of the presentations, I think that would be good. So we'll have a bit of time for Q&A at the end of each of the presentations. So Scott, maybe I can hand over to you now, if that's okay, to talk through the work that you're doing with the Bay Conservation Alliance.
Sure, thanks, Vanita. Just give me a quick, yeah, I can hear you, Scott, and I can see you. Thank you, because I hate getting 10 minutes into this and everyone's saying, I couldn't hear a thing you were saying. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to share a screen and a whiteboard, because this is quite timely, because I was just asked by, I don't know if you guys have had anything to do with the Te Arawa Lakes Trust, but they sent me an email. We had a little bit to do with them with the GIC over the years, and we've got a couple of groups for them on the GIC portal, and there's a couple of people and they're doing some awesome work. I haven't looked at what they were doing in ages, and they sent me an email and said, where's all my data? And I said, I've been seeing your data everywhere. And so I actually did this for them, because I got a meeting with them, and I did a flow diagram chart thing. Sorry, my wife's chair is just in the way here, of how GIC connects to all the other portals in the Bay of Plenty and Waikato, which Te Arawa Lakes Trust is part of, just here. So this is my my whiteboard session just here about what we're doing. So in the middle here, you got the GIC portal, and then over here, you've got Waikato Regional Council, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, the Manaaki Kaima Mamaku Trust, which borders Bay of Plenty and Waikato. It's like the ridge between the two. Ngāti Kia Ngāti Koara Trust, which are part of the Manaaki Kaima Mamaku Trust, but some of their data is hosted on Bay of Plenty Regional Council, even though they're in the Waikato region. And then you've got another group over here, which I haven't spoken to ages, and they were an old GIC group that we did a heap of work for. And 3 years later, they just emailed me out of the blue and said, we're redoing our website. What's the link to that dashboard again? They've got stuff they're doing with freshwater stuff with their volunteers, which is hosted in Bay of Plenty, which Te Arawa Lakes Trust are going to be using as well. And in the middle of all this chaos over here is the Ethos development portal, where we make all these things, and our FB server, of course, which is making all these things talk to each other everywhere. But anyway, I couldn't talk about the Bay Conservation Alliance here with GIC NZ. So all the Bay Conservation Alliance stuff is all hosted on GIC NZ, without talking about all these other AGOL portals that are all talking to each other as well. And so what I did as part of telling them where all their data is, I just opened a whole heap of windows and made a whole heap of links. And in case you're wondering, this down here is just a very lazy, semi-retired conservation dog. Doesn't do anything anymore. She just sits there on the couch. And Bay Conservation Alliance, I'll just share a screen now. Host disabled participant screen sharing. That's a way to get me to shut up. Can you let me share a screen, Vanita? I've got it actually on on the screen behind me as well. I can just talk to that.
Start sharing options. All participants. Got it.
Cool. Okay. Sweet. So, I mean, this actually just hasn't got a map on it. Can you guys see that screen down the bottom there? Am I sharing a screen? I hope I don't accidentally share. Like I was actually got Zero open another monitor over here, so I don't share my accounts or something like that. Okay, so Bay Conservation Alliance are an umbrella group for all these groups in the Bay of Plenty, obviously, but there's so many connections happening everywhere, the Bay of Plenty and with Waikato, that there isn't actually much stuff hosted on GIC NZ. It's hosted in other places, and we're bringing it all together, basically. The Bay of Plenty Constellation Alliance has got, I'm just going to get that out of the way, and I'm going to bring in this one just here, wherever it is. Master care groups just here. Bay Conservation Alliance has got 16 groups. If you can see that, just give me a thumbs up. You can actually see the screen I'm talking about. That there's a dashboard here with groups on it. Sweet. Okay, so it started off. This is ages ago. So back when Martin Simon was the regional coordinator and I took over from him, we had a talk to Michelle from Bay Conservation Alliance, and we said rather than talking to each individual group, we'll just talk to the umbrella group, and then we'll go from there. And so now they've got 16 groups out there. But because we were doing some cool work, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Ngāti Kaumamaki Trust, Ngāti Kia, Ngāti Kuara, and Waikato Regional Council said, oh, we'll do some of that as well. So now all those groups, some of them got data hosted on some portals, some on other portals. So when you actually take that off and you look at what's going on in the Bay of Plenty, we've got 81 groups all doing work here, and everyone's like affiliated with all these different little groups everywhere. But we're using that GIC hub in the center of it all. It's not actually a hub as in the ArcGIS hub, but it's like a hub, because that's where we've got a lot of our users and that type of stuff, and how people get access to all the different layers, to everyone work together so we can get an overall picture. And that's just my phone ringing, so I'm going to shut that up, of what's happening in the Bay of Plenty. And each individual group, so this is obviously an experience build you're looking at just here, and each individual group have got their own individual experience build, which is data driven. So we don't have to make a new experience build every time. It just filters out just for that particular group. Sometimes though, we have to be very, very careful, because there's some groups that say, hold a second, I don't just want to filter, I want to view. And so that's when we get things like the Manaaki Kaumamaki Trust come into it. So they've got their own view of things. But it's still working with in all the same environment, but theirs just looks completely different. But when you, let's go back a second. Oops. My share bar is in the way. Here we go. Oh no, wrong one. I've lost it. I've got too many windows open. Okay, and the other group that we're doing it with is a Manaaki Kaumamaki Trust group, but they want their own portal as well, is the Ngāti Kia, Ngāti Tuara. So these guys aren't actually a GIC group, but we registered their portal through the Esri Conservation Program. And so we do quite a lot of that as well. If a group wants to have their own portal, we register through them. And so the other thing that I was going to talk about is, so this is very cool. This is the Totopanamu, who were a GIC group, and I completely forgot about them actually until they emailed me the other day. And they're still going strong. They've got a backyard trapping thing, and they're doing catfish surveillance in all their lakes. And what reminded me of them too is because that's something that Te Arawa Lakes Trust are going to be doing as well. But they're doing it in isolation with each other. And so I thought, well, why don't you guys start talking to each other? And so we're going to end up doing that as well. But there's still a GIC volunteer who's helping these guys out. And they're working with the local school as well, which is very cool. So yeah, I was supposed to be doing a presentation on Bay Conservation Alliance, but it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, because so many groups are actually working with each other all the time. I thought you were from Bay Conservation Alliance. Oh no, I'm from so-and-so. I only do that on Wednesdays. On Fridays, I'm actually working with this other group, and they're doing all this work. So we're trying to make it so all the data in the Bay of Plenty and the Waikato we're not creating silos basically, and it's a hell of a lot of work. There's a lot of whiteboarding, figuring out how we're going to do all that. So watch this space to see what happens with Tarawa Lakes Trust. Not sure, but I've got another meeting with them in another week or so. But what I wanted to do was show you this is a guy who Corey, who got in contact with us, I don't know, at least 4 years ago, and said, "Oh, look, I'm interested in doing GIS." And when I started like Googling people and going, where the hell is their data, I found this guy and I found a story map that he made, and it's absolutely incredible. And this is a guy who came to us, you know, just looking for just a way to dabble in GIS 4 years ago, and now he's producing stuff which is just blowing me away, really. And I'd like to say it's some of the mentoring and stuff I've been giving him, but I seriously did about half an hour with him and just gave him a license. And then 4 years later, he's just producing this amazing, cool stuff. So I can't wait to actually get access to their portal and see what else they've been doing out there, and help them out with keeping their lakes and their backyard free of pests, and counting all the good things and killing all the bad things out there. There's a whole heap of other. No, that's the one I was looking for, just there. And that's the Manaki Kama Mamiku Trust is there. And there's a whole lot of the screens I had up here at the moment, but I can't for the life of me see where they are right now. No, we'll head back over this one again. So you can see I went to a lot of trouble to prepare this presentation. But in conclusion, we're absolutely flat out with the Bay Conservation Alliance and getting all these groups to talk to each other. And huge thanks to Quentin, who keeps on jumping in and doing stuff for us whenever we need him to, because he seems to always be at the other end of Slack to help us out. We just find ourselves a lot of time just dropping tools and, you know, doing GIC work, but not actually, you know, recording that, oh yeah, actually we were doing some volunteer work here. So it's good to stop every now and then and go, wow, look at all the little connections we made, and all the groups that are talking to each other. And so that's probably 10 minutes. I'm going to leave it there, Anita.
Yeah, it's great. That's a lot, Scott. That's a lot to get through, and yeah,
it's very confusing.
What support do you have from the councils in the area?
So what we've got, it's quite confusing because there's so much crossover between everyone's jobs. So Bay Plain Regional Council mostly are just always there when we need them. So there's a woman called Anna Dawson who's in charge of looking after her care groups. We call them care groups, the community groups. My wife is actually the operations manager for Bay Conservation Alliance. And so her and Anna work together all the time. Lots of groups are both Bay of Plenty Regional Council and BCA groups. They're registered with both. And so sometimes it's hard to know if we're, you know, if we're volunteering or if it's my wife and she's charging BCA, or if Anna's doing the job and that type of stuff. Heaps of support from Bay of Plenty Regional Council, definitely. And also lots of use of their portal as well. So they'll just say, here, have another 10 usernames and that type of stuff, which is very cool.
What if anyone else had any questions or comments or observations for Scott?
If no one else had one, Scott, that's awesome. I mean, there's so much happening.
There is. I don't understand it, and I built it.
I love just at the beginning when you're just showing the whiteboard and the interconnections between these different groups from a data perspective. I just wonder, at like a technical level, is that just all managed through collaborations, or are people, you know, like AGOL collaborations, or?
We went down, we have many times, every time they go, collaborations are better now, we go down the collaborations route, and then we just keep going back to plain old normal groups, into organizational groups. Like the Ethos AGOL portal has got a collaboration with everybody. And we go to use it and we go, oh, do we really need it to be collaboration? Yeah. What it all comes down to is when you say, who's going to put up their hand to host this? And there's, must be, 50 feature services involved in this. And we know where every single one of them is hosted. And we just say to someone, look, just before you jump in here, do you realize that Bay of Plenty Regional Council are hosting your trapping data? And people are like, I don't care. But when we say to someone, like, hey, you've got this sensitive, like cultural information, like wahi tapu information, that type of stuff. And we say, you don't want anyone else to, trust me, you don't want anyone else to host this. Host it on your portal and keep it on your portal, and don't share it with anybody unless you tell us you want it shared with somebody. And this can all be done with standard everyday groups. So that's what we ended up doing. We keep on going, yeah, collaborations are cool. But we never end up using them. We just go standard groups.
I mean, if groups work, don't they? If they do the job, then
yeah, they work. Yeah, I mean, the only time we used to use collaborations, we had to use collaborations, is when we're doing enterprise to AGOL. And we have got a couple of those running still, but they don't get used very much because usually everyone we deal with is AGOL.
Oh, cool, awesome.
Anyone else? I think you've overwhelmed everyone, Scott.
I'm glad no one asked me to explain the architecture.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Scott, could you just explain the architecture, please?
Yeah,
that wasn't what I was going to say. I was going to say I'm extremely pleased this has been videoed, because I definitely need to watch it again, probably at half speed. Normally I watch things at double speed, but that's awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's all right. You're not the first person to say that. You say, "Yeah, I love your presentations," when you watch them at half speed. Yeah.
What sits behind it, Scott, in terms of the architecture? Just very briefly.
What sits like how's the architecture planned?
Yeah, how does it kind of like all fit together? So you've got
in a nutshell. So there are actually diagrams for every single system, and then there's little hyperlinks between the architecture diagrams. But basically what it boils down to is we have this hierarchical scheme of how we do our architecture. And so we start off at the very, very top with a host of feature services, and then we start going down and down and down layers until you get right to the end, which is always an experience build. But we do a lot of data driving inside there. So we don't have to build the same dashboard twice. We don't have to build the same experience build twice, all that type of stuff. But you just have to be really, really careful with that, because you're using filters and not views. And so every now and then we say, stop, make a view. And so there's always that, but then I'm going to make a view. It's going to be another half an hour instead of instantaneous if you just done a data driver. So that's the sort of the theory behind it. But yeah, to actually, we could do a session. I could bring up an architecture diagram and show you how it all fits together, but that's probably going to take a lot longer than we've got time for.
That's great. I like this as an example of to use the word collaboration outside of the Esri context, between Ethos Environmental, councils and community and iwi groups in the region, and volunteers, and just all the effort that goes into it. I think it's a really good demonstration of if lots of people do a little bit, just how much you can possibly do. It's a really good way of showcasing that work.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, and hopefully, actually, I was going to show that how many pests we've caught. I mean, we are actually killing stuff. Saving stuff is the most important thing, obviously, and we're counting things. But these guys have done an amazing job. When you sit back and look at it and go, yeah, okay, the GIS is very impressive, but look what the volunteers are doing.
Yeah,
they're doing a huge amount of work out there.
Yeah, really powerful.
And we're showing that to the world. Before we were just like, oh, trust me, we're killing heaps. But now we're like, yeah, we can tell you to the nearest possum how much work we've done.
That's great work. Thank you very much. Appreciate you sharing your work with us, and hopefully we'll hear more from you in the future. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, I'll always be here. Till 2050. I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks. So I thought it's a good chance to now take a different perspective on working with GIC, and we've invited Julian Hitchman, who in his day job works as a GIS analyst at Walking Access Commission. Remind me, Julian, the rebranded name.
Yeah, so we're called Heringa Nuku now, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but we get there.
Yeah. So Julian, we introduced Julian to the Waikanae Estuary Care Group a little while ago, actually, just over a year or so ago. And so, Julian, we're quite keen to hear a volunteer's perspective on working with a community group and kind of what you've been up to.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Benita. Yeah, so Yeah, kia ora everyone. Yeah, my name's Julian. Yeah, as Benita said, Senior GIS Analyst at heading at Anaku, formerly Walking Access Commission. Yeah, when I started working with these guys, the Waikanai Estuary Group last year, yeah, I don't have a conservation background, so it's purely coming at it from a GIS perspective. So I'll talk a bit about the kinds of, yeah, the sort of things I've been learning along the way. But I really quickly threw a presentation together, obviously in a story map, because I felt obligated to use story maps. So I will now share my screen and get into it. Just assuming everyone can hear me and see me okay and see the shared screen, all good? Yeah, sweet. All right, cool. So move that guy out of the way. No, not there. Sorry. Okay, cool. Sorry, just bars, just zoom bars. All right, so Waikanai Estuary is a scientific reserve, and it's located here, just off Kapiti Island. It's a lovely little spot. For those who live in the Wellington region, you've probably been here at some point. It's yeah, about 80 hectares of dock land, and it's home to a really wide variety of flora and fauna, and it's a bit of a fragile ecosystem, but there's a lot of different creatures in there and plants as well, and it all needs maintaining. And so these are some of the guys that live there. We've got over 60 species of birds, a lot of dotterels, pukeko, oystercatcher, but it also gets visited by on a seasonal basis by a lot of other characters as well, such as terns and the old spoonbill. So yeah, really quite a rich and diverse place, and actually a lot of people, I'm told by the very keen conservationists who work there, that there's a lot of people who actually come from all around different parts of New Zealand and even other parts of the world to photograph some of these birds in this spot. So it is quite significant in terms of the variety. Also, there's fern birds as well, matata, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So these are the guys who are, and gals who are looking after it. So they're a registered charity, and yeah, about 125 volunteers. They do, yeah, educational days and planting days and stuff like that, as you can see here. This is the main fella who you might have seen at the AGM, Robin. He is the chairman and also just the most enthusiastic man I've ever met for GIS, which is great. So he's principally who I work with alongside a couple of other people as well. Yeah, so these are busy folk. They have put in around 4,000 hours annually, and they have planted about 70,000 plants to date. So a lot happening. Here's a few of the bits and pieces. I got a chance to actually go out to the reserve late last year and explore it with Robin, and he showed me some of the things that they're doing there. One of the really awesome things is they've actually got a nursery where they're getting these plants going and then going out and planting them on planting days. But yeah, just your usual conservation work, really, just a whole range that's keeping them busy. So where does GIS fit in? Well, they, as you know, I guess every group like this is on a journey, and at some point they've realized that, oh, GIS is pretty cool, might need that. And these guys are no different. So they only had a couple of old maps, and they didn't really have any data, but they had a really strong vision for what they needed to collect, and that's why they reached out to GIC. So what they were after was just usual stuff. I mean, I guess the things I'm going to cover in this are pretty basic for our purposes, but when you don't have this stuff mapped and you're starting from scratch, it's just yeah, you just got to build up that foundation. So that's what we went about doing, making a nice little spreadsheet of all the data sets they wanted to collect, and then we got into it. First and foremost, I just love any chance to use like bloom effects for no reason whatsoever. So this is the members database that they collected through Google Sites, and we georeferenced that quite painfully. As I'm sure we all know, when you get a bunch of addresses to georeference, they're never in the format that is required, and usually it's free text. So that was a fun little time to unpick that. But eventually we got the volunteers a view of exactly where all their members were and the relationship they had to the actual reserve itself. Then we started kicking off with getting some asset data. So Robin went out into the reserve with his with field maps and started collecting a bunch of different things. So we've got signs, tables, just things that they knew they had, but they didn't know where they were. So just real basic, but that was the first thing to allow him and the rest of the crew to see the power of being able to go out and do field capture and not have to worry about a GPS and, you know, GPX points and stuff. This is just, you know, I mean, we all know field maps, we love field maps. So that was cool. Then moving on, we wanted to actually begin to capture the areas of planting that were happening on a volunteer basis. So as well as doing main planting days with large groups, they also had individual volunteers and members of the Waikanae Estuary Care Group who would look after individual patches. So they went around mapping all of these and quantifying how many plants had been planted in those locations, which again, super basic, but just really, they were really stoked to be able to see that and then see how that interacted with the other data that they'd begun to capture. So as you can see, some decent numbers there. And I think that was only in last year. So they're, yeah, building up the capability. Speaking of building up capability, I finally forced myself to learn arcades, so that was really awesome. And yeah, now I see what everyone else is banging on about, and it's, yeah, pretty epic. That's also been feeding back into my main work as well. We don't do a ton of field work here at Headinga Anuku. We are mostly like just a mapping system shop, you know, for the public really. But this has been super cool, just basic stuff for most of you, I'm sure, but just, yeah, being able to use calculated expressions to pull values from underlying zones. So this is an example of photo points. They've got a bunch of photo points where they can take photos at intervals to show change, just visually how the reserve is changing over time. And so yeah, capturing photos. That's not filled out. I'm gonna have to talk to Robin about that. Either that or I haven't configured pop-ups properly. There we go. Yeah. So again, yeah, super basic. Another area that I had to upskill on was working with Trap NZ data as a GIS professional rather than just a person filling out the trap in my backyard. Yeah, using the Trap NZ app. So after a bit of playing around and asking Rory and doing some Googling, I finally figured this stuff out using the API to get this mapped. And I'm totally happy to take advice on how to best visualize trap data, because it's really not my area of expertise, but this is sort of just the first attempt really. So yeah, showing this to Robin and the gang was pretty powerful for them. They could visually see all the work that they've been doing and how it had been paying off, and where the density of within the reserve, where the density of kills was. So that was cool, and then naturally, you know, had to do it. So took that information and turned it into a lovely little dashboard, which was really fun to play around with, and the volunteers really enjoyed seeing this perspective as well. Being able to see how their trapping was comparing to the previous year, and you know, who were the people who were most looking after it. Just basic information, but going from a few months previous where they had no spatial data to finally having a dashboard view of some of this stuff was quite a powerful transformation. So that was really fun to play around with. And last thing I want to talk about is just finally starting to front foot some stuff. So we've kind of got a bit of a bedrock of data and field maps and dashboards. And now they want to kind of get to doing some more studies and kind of observations to try and see the improvements that have been happening around the reserve with respect to flora and fauna. And so they did a little fernbird study. These are really shy birds, but they're an indicator generally of, improving ecosystem. And so I've got a little recording here, and I have no idea if you're going to be able to hear it, but let's try. Did you hear anything? No? Okay. Well, it's like a beep. Right, that's my bird sound. So quite a unique call, I think. And these guys were going out and doing a survey over the period of late May, early June this year, and they were trying to survey and hear or see these birds. So we've got a little timeline. You can see immediately within the first week or so of doing the study, they'd heard 4 or so. And then as time went on, they heard a few more. And so these are really small numbers, but just the fact that they were able to map this stuff and collect data, to try and show other people about their biodiversity and what they had been seeing out in the field was really cool. And so they want to keep repeating this study on a quarterly basis to try and see if they can see and hear more fernbirds. So yeah, that's it for me really. Yeah, super basic stuff, but I was just really encouraged by, and sometimes when you're working with other people who aren't familiar with GIS, there's a bit of a resistance, or they're, not really interested. But these guys were super keen to get stuck in and really passionate about, seeing the benefits of GIS. So that was fun to work with them on that. And yeah, just the fact that it just, the technology beautifully complements the work because it's so spatial in nature, I guess. And final note, I think I just threw them in the deep end a little bit with AGOL, and that was quite overwhelming. So we had to kind of pull back and say, okay, let's learn one thing at a time, because ArcGIS Online has just got so much in there now where it's almost as overwhelming as ArcPro. So yeah, we're just doing baby steps, but I think everyone's coming along nicely. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, guys. Kia ora.
That's great. Thanks, Julian. You've done a lot of work in a reasonably short period of time by the looks of it. So how have you managed to do that, in addition to your day job?
Robin, frustratedly giving me a text being like, "Oi, can you remember to turn this layer on?" Yeah, it's been tricky, I think, managing the two a little bit, but it's been nice because I've had sessions where we've I've met up with the volunteers in town and showed them some stuff. I've also gone out to Waikanai as well, and I think as time has gone on, I've had to do less and less because they have understood how to manage some of these layers and manage and set up some of their own maps. So I become more hands-off, which is really cool.
Yeah, nice. Kaz said her mic isn't working, but wanted to say well done with getting the TrappNZ data into AGOL. Tried doing that a few years ago and gave up because it seemed too hard. So what tips or tricks could you share?
Well, I think actually the documentation probably the documentation has come along a bit on TrapNZ's website now. So there's an API reference for TrapNZ specifically for ArcGIS. It doesn't talk about how to do that directly as a hosted feature layer in ArcGIS Online, but the technique is basically the same. So I can flick that through if you like, but you can just type in TrapNZ ArcGIS API, and there's some pretty good documentation there now. Yeah, I did bang my head against the wall a few times though, so I empathize.
If you wouldn't mind sharing that, either send it to me and I'll post it on the Facebook page, and then it'll show up on the front page of our website. So it could be a good way of, we haven't got a resources page as such, so I'm just thinking of ways in which we can kind of share stuff. Got another message here. Anyone else got any questions for Julian? Or observations, feedback? Just trying to see if I can see people. Right, good work, Julian. So what's next with what's Robin expecting from you next?
That's the one.
Thank you.
It's all right. I'll flick that through. So yeah, so there's a few things. I think I'm yeah, I'm really keen to help them build up the capability for community engagement. So like you know, there's a lot of people who live in the area who I think are really passionate about contributing, but they aren't necessarily members. So I'd love to work with them, and I think they're also keen on this as well, because they have like things like this, different flora and fauna studies. If we can set up some public facing survey 123 forms where people can kind of begin to you know, interact, and if they spot a different type of bird, they can log it as an observation, you know, kind of bring the community in. And likewise, all of this stuff is currently unshared on AGOL right now. And I think Robin is really keen to get to a place where we can start to share some of this stuff with the community as well, so they can actually see the numbers, because it's all well and good us knowing, but I think actually being able to put that on a hub site and kind of, you know, try and do some of the stuff that Scott was showing with having kind of that outward view would be really cool.
It's great, and great work. Yeah, definitely. You know, kudos to you for all of the effort that you've put in, because obviously, yeah, doing wonderful things with the Waikanae Estuary Care Group there. And Robin came along to our AGM, and he just wanted to say, you know, thanks very much for all of your support. So thanks
awesome
for sharing your story.
Appreciate that. Cheers, Benita.
Thanks.
I'll stop sharing, eh?
Okay, thanks. Quentin, if you're still around. Oh, you are. You are. Wondered if you'd be able to share a little bit with us around the work that you're currently doing with Wingspan. So for those of you who don't know Quentin, Quentin Higgins is on the GIS in Conservation Committee. It has been for a few years now. He's also the chair of the New Zealand Esri User Group, and is our regional coordinator for GIC, and does quite a bit of volunteer work for Scott, by the sounds of the Bay Conservation Alliance. So all around good GIS guy.
Oh, good. Awesome to see what's been said so far, and yeah, great to see what you've done, Julie. And I too also had the challenge of figuring out TrapNZ and how to get data out of there. But on that journey, I kind of knew that Scott had already done it, right? Which is interesting, and I think that's what we need to do, is share our learnings more with each other so that we can all grow and build on top of what's already been done, rather than starting from scratch. And I've got to do in the Kiwi world that lends itself to exactly that. The more we can share, the better off I think we'll all be. So anyway, here we go. Let's have a look at Wingspan, get the right screen. And this came from Scott. So Scott, who of course spoke first today, reached out and said, hey, is there anyone who wants to give a hand? And so this is the main Wingspan website, National Bird of Prey Centre. It's their external facing website to the public. And what we're going to do is drop into the experience build that Scott set up at the very beginning. And so once he handed over to me, I just picked up the framework that he had already set up and then started messing around, creating more layers and bits and pieces. I hadn't seen framework quite set up this way before, so that was quite intrigued me, the way that Scott had started this off. So let's have a look at dashboard. So this is looking across the sightings going back in time, all the way back into before the 1980s. What this started out was a spreadsheet. So the Bird of Prey Centre had been maintaining a spreadsheet and had many people banging data into a spreadsheet. And of course, there was all different coordinate systems and descriptions and all sorts of stuff in there. So that was fun and games, trying to unravel that and eventually get it geocoded to the point. And of course, we're looking at clustering here. So if we zoom in a little bit, we start to see the clusters unravel. And of course, this is where the Bird of Prey Centre is, right? So you'd expect a heck of a lot more sightings in that area. And there are, so it's all engageable across time. You know, we can engage with a particular part of the charting and say, well, just show us Bay of Plenty, and then it'll 334 return sightings going back in time, and you can engage with that. So this is the Falcon sightings dashboard, which is internal to New Zealand Bird of Prey Centre, hosted by New Zealand GIS in Conservation. So they see the level of detail, including being able to zoom right in as well and see where that sighting actually hung. So we don't show that to the public, but we do show some of it to the public. So again, this is all the data that's available internally to the Bird of Prey Centre. How's it done? Well, we're using Survey 123. So once we got the feature service of all those 1,800 odd dots going back 40, 50 years, we then pointed Survey 123 at that, and of course that is a form in Survey 123, and I've tried to get a little bit colour scheme in line with Bird of Prey. And you've got the observer section. You have to give us an email in case we need to contact you. You talk about the environment, what region it's in. Obviously we need a date, the location, the habitat notes, how many birds you saw, what you saw, the sex of that if you know, and of course you can take a photo and drop that in there if you want to, if you're lucky enough to get a photo of the sighting itself. So as I said, all that data flows straight into dashboard into here, and then the Bird of Prey Centre get to decide whether they want that sighting to be seen by the public or not. So let's go and have a look at what the public sees. So again, we're now converted that data into a heat map, and so we can kind of see that where a majority of the sightings going back across all time have been seen, and it's a locked heat map, but as we zoom in, that will kind of change. So again, most of the sightings are in Rotorua, but then the heat map will disappear and it kind of switches into the sightings. So same thing, it's clustering. And then as we zoom in, we can get closer, we can engage with the sighting, and we can see the cut down version. This is what the public are allowed to see. So they're not going to know the email address of who reported it and their name if that was ever submitted, but they get the basic information. If they zoom in too far, you'll notice I set up here, if you zoom in too close, the sightings will not display. And if we get in too close, the sightings disappear. And then I've even put in the legend, zoom out to display sightings. I just put in a block of New Zealand and then turned it on at that level with a legend saying zoom out. That was a bit of a mind bender to try and figure out. So yeah, really happy with it. It's engageable. So same thing, we can engage with that data and say, well, let's just look at Bay of Plenty and cut out the rest of New Zealand. And then of course we can say, well, show us what happened in 2017. And then we've got a return of that. So now we're just looking at 2017 sightings. And of course, that's a cluster of 7, and that'll return on how many birds were seen on what date in 2017, engage with that record, and there's the data. And of course, you can go the other way and say, well, let's have just use the slice and dice drop down and focus on Hawke's Bay, say, and then you get the short number of sightings that were in the Hawke's Bay in the cluster map, and zoom in, and life is good. Probably done that far too fast, but that was fun. Of course, the public may want to see stuff in 3D. So we've made a 3D version. Oh, yeah. And same thing, right? They're getting the public view. So they engage, they don't get a heck of a lot of data about what's going on, but they can click on things and we can zoom off to Rotorua and kind of have a 3D experience for the public to play with. You know, go down to Wellington where you're sitting, Benita, right? Go and have a look, the 3D view of Wellington. And same thing, if you get in too close, these objects will start to disappear because we don't want the public to know all too much about exactly where things are. And that all makes sense. Report a sighting, obviously that's the survey 1, 2, 3 form, and then you can just have a map view of just show me the map. And the two maps are linked, right? So any kind of filtering, if we drop the filtering of Hawke's Bay, we go back to there. And then if we go back to the sightings again, we'll find that map is following the map view that we've changed. Zoom in on Wellington, flick over the master map, and the master map has changed to Wellington as well. And of course, the Bird of Prey Centre, how's our time going? 10:02, has also got its own internal 3D version as well, which we have full control of. And I didn't fire it up earlier, but you can see it still works when the internet catches up, and their view's slightly different. And of course, they get the level of data, including photos, if there were any, flowing through into there. Go and have a look at the sightings in Arthur's Pass, just because it's cool terrain, or off into the glacier. So yeah, not near as much as what you've just seen with the other two projects, but this is only the starter for 10. The New Zealand Bird of Prey Centre are happy with the information assets we've got set up to be shown to the public. So they're now ready to show the public view to the public, and they'll be looking to embed this inside of their website. So that everyone gets a taste, and anyone can report the sighting of a falcon if you happen to see one, because it's all available. The survey shared to the public right now, ready to go. That'll do from me today.
Thanks, Q. I think it's a really good way of showcasing how the GIS tools can be used to kind of collaborate with the public as well. You know, that kind of ability to use survey 1, 2, 3 to be able to kind of capture the falcon sightings, and then the tools that are there to be able to present that information back as well. So you're kind of getting that feedback. So not only are you submitting a sighting, but you can actually kind of see it on the map as well. I think that's a really nice way of kind of closing that loop.
Yeah.
Wondered if anyone had any questions or comments for Quentin.
I'm trying to figure out how to put my hand up, but I can't figure out how to do it on Zoom. I have 100 questions. I was first like to say that looks nothing like how I hand it to you. I think we've got a good deal going here. I'll just design it and you actually build it, make it look good, because that's so far beyond what I could do with the UI. First of all, how did you do that formatting in that list widget in that dashboard? And secondly, can you show us the desktop editor? Have you done cool? Did you show us the desktop editor?
No, I didn't even bother, did I?
Have you done some amazing stuff with that as well?
Yeah, so the desktop editor gives the ability for the society to decide what they want the public to see. So there's sightings out in the ocean, which is the old data, but that won't see to the public. So you can kind of see down here, there's a cess for sharing down there, and share. Are
you sharing your screen?
Oh no. Actually hit share.
There we go.
Fun and Zoom.
Cool.
There we go. So here's the editor, and if we click on the icon that's sitting in the ocean, that won't be shared with the public. Well, actually that one is, so that's a true sighting. But there are some of the older sightings which are still sitting in the ocean. We can see them clearly in the Hawke's Bay, but the public don't see them because they don't have a date for sharing against those records. So share with public is blank. And that's how I've controlled the view, right? Is I've created a view of the data that we're sharing with public has a date in it.
Sweet.
And so, they can come in here, they can edit that record, pop a date in there, and as soon as they put a date in there and then update that record, that dot would then show up in the public view. So that's working really well. So they have the ability to vet every single sighting and decide whether they want that information to be shared with the public or not.
Cool.
And of course, the look at the wider falcon sightings for the all 1,800 of them, and then do what they like with that.
That's
What
awesome.
you mean, Scott.
Yeah, that's wicked. And we don't have time. One day you're going to have to show me how you did the formatting and the list widget in your dashboard as well.
Yeah, not quite as elegant as the arcade that we saw from Julian before. That's another thing. We should be sharing these learnings, and so that others don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I'll pick your brain about it later.
All good.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, Q, like around the actual, using this kind of mechanism as a way of kind of like showcasing, kind of starting to share some of those stories. It's the bit that we have been wanting to kind of put some more focus and attention to going forward, both as a committee, but also as a group of volunteers and also community conservation and iwi groups who are using GIS to support all of our conservation efforts. So really open to ideas and suggestions on how we can, do, mechanisms for sharing the work that we do, and all those tips and tricks, use of Arcade by Julian, or Scott's amazing architecture that brings together lots of AGOL groups to be able to kind of share all of the work through the Bay Conservation Alliance, and Quentin, all of the tools that you've just demonstrated as well. So lots of real good tips and tricks in there. I'm just conscious of time, and I just really want to say thanks to our 3 presenters today, to Scott and Julian and Quentin, for sharing the work that you've been doing. That's fantastic. It's an awesome showcase. Also wanted to ask if anyone had any suggestions or would like to volunteer for our next quarterly kind of brown bag in November. You can either drop something in the chat now or send us an email, either to myself or to the NZ Conservation Gmail on our website. Otherwise, we'll probably start shoulder tapping in a little while. Just want to say on behalf of the GRC committee, so that's myself, Parker, Rory, Hasman, Quentin, Rory, Shannon and Roland. Thanks very much to everyone for joining us today. And hopefully it's been useful. Be keen to hear your thoughts on whether or not, we want to continue with these kind of quarterly sessions. We'll keep going until, we don't have any more content, but I feel like we're going to have plenty to talk about over the next few years. So really great work. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And
just a hand up. Just while we've got everyone, Shan, who's currently black screen on our list there, is Shannon. She's joined the New Zealand GIS in Conservation just in the last AGM, and she's going to look after our social media. So fire things through to Benita, and then of course we'll link up with Shannon and we'll get your content out there. So welcome, Shannon. Thanks for watching today. Thanks.
Hey, Benita, can I just jump in just quickly, if you don't mind?
Of course you can, Roland.
Oh, Roland.
Hey, firstly, thanks to the presenters, Q, Scott, Julian, those are awesome. And thanks to the committee for putting this on, because it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Quick question though, with my eagle hat on, Julian, Q, Scott, are your presentations down for NZGiC? Because I haven't seen them, and those three things I've just seen would be fantastic.
Not this one. I don't care what I present in the EUC, but I was going to do the hub because that seems to be the thing at the moment. But feel free to tell me to do something else.
Hub will be fine. But Q, that because like Scott, I want to see how you did that widget. And Julian, the stuff you've done, those would be great presentations at NZGiC. And I know you two are probably also attending just like Scott is. Why haven't I seen your names on that list?
I definitely submitted a presentation.
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, right. Yeah, yours is probably on the list. But I didn't see Q and Julian in there.
Yeah, I'm presenting, but not GIC material, and I do have, it's been accepted as a paper. Yeah.
Likewise, I'm doing a quick lightning talk on something else, but I'd be happy to present on this if it's useful.
Yeah, because I'm facilitating the conservation stream, and when I last checked, it looked a bit light, and none of you people were in that stream. Are you somewhere else? Scott, did you go and present somewhere else inside the conference?
Are we talking about the conference that's coming up in September?
Yes.
Yeah. I submitted something and I got accepted, and it was very late last night. I was checking my emails and messages and stuff, and I couldn't see my name anywhere on the list of presenters. But I got a cheap ticket, so that's all I care about.
Fair enough.
But no,
I might be in contact. I'll email you all separately.
Just get in contact. We'll chat about it. Happy to do a tech session as well if you want to, just in the in the lunchroom place.
Right.
Yeah, so we did that last year because we just had too much content to present, so we did a tech session as well.
Great, good plug there for the New Zealand Ezra User Conference, Roland. So happens at approximately the 21st, 23rd?
25th to the 27th. Yep.
Excellent. We'll have a GIC dinner for volunteers and anyone who wants to come along on the Monday night. Pay your own way, but we'll send out some comms shortly, so Park will be up there on behalf. Thank you, everyone. It's been great to see you, and look forward to doing this on a more regular basis. So, yep, kia ora, and have a good afternoon. Stay warm wherever you are.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Fabulous.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.